But yeah, Adnan, I guess I assume they can hear you, so we'll go ahead and get started with the unfortunate injury news from the first couple days. Um, what is your takeaway on the injuries to Wilcox, the safety, and to Michael Bennett, the defensive tackle, and the guys we signed? I guess go ahead and start off with Wilcox. Team kind of electing not to bring anyone in. What are your thoughts on that injury?
I think first and foremost for both of them, I'm just kind of gutted for both of them just personally because they're both guys, especially Michael Bennett. He's someone that was last season he was added onto the team as a midseason addition. He got cut from the team a couple of weeks later, and then he got added back onto the team for training camp. It's one of those things where these are two fringe guys who are just trying to make it in the NFL. They're just trying to stake their claim, leave their mark. And it just sucks whenever there is an injury, just period. With Wilcox, I think it's worse because I think he would have been a more prominent member in terms of depth. He would have been one of our primary backup safeties. Michael Bennett got hurt, but then the team signed Alan Bailey almost immediately after. And no matter what Dan Quinn says, that has to be. Dan Quinn said that the team was in contact with Bailey, that they wanted him the whole time, but it has to have something to do with the injury because the team pounced on signing Bailey immediately after the injury. I don't know if there was something in terms of the contract. Maybe the two sides were far apart on the deal, and the Falcons just gave him what he wanted. Maybe the extra year had something to do with it. Maybe the Falcons only wanted to give him one, he wanted two, so they gave him a multi-year deal, and they saw that they had to bring him in when Michael Bennett got hurt. It sucks. Injuries always suck, but I mean, you just have to push forward. You have to push through.
Yeah, it's tough. And obviously, it sucks to lose two guys on literally the first day of training camp. Um, but yeah, I was kind of surprised by Wilcox, to be honest, that they didn't, first of all, that they didn't sign anyone, and second, that they seem to have such high plans for him. Like the team, they talked about him like he was basically the guy they wanted as their third safety. And they, from the first day of training camp, they were using him as that third safety, that big nickel guy. So I guess it's maybe more of a loss than we would initially have thought, because I think there was kind of a consensus between us that he was a favorite for a roster spot, but not that he was locked in any way. And it seems like the Falcons kind of considered him that locked in third safety. But yeah, I mean, we know he could play both safety spots. I guess he was basically Neal's primary backup, so the depth takes a hit there. But as we saw, I guess Kamal Ishmael is transitioning back to strong safety, and it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I think he was a better strong safety than he was a linebacker. I think his path to the roster is a lot easier at strong safety with the kind of log jam they have at linebacker right now. But
Man,
yeah,
Kamal Ishmael, that man is literally the team's version of duct tape. You just like stick him on wherever, whatever needs fixing. Before it was just like we had very bad linebacker depth. You just transition him to linebacker. Now, you need another safety with Wilcox going down.
yeah.
So you just stick him at safety. I mean, it's nice to have a versatile piece like that. Someone who's not too expensive. So, you know, props to Kamal. The man was a seventh round pick before. He's been more than worth that investment.
Yeah, I agree. All right, guys, I'm trying to figure out what's causing the static. It might be the fan in this room. It is kind of loud, so apologies. As you can tell, I'm not in the Falcon layer. This is a new spot for me, so I appreciate your understanding, guys, for the mobile show tonight. We're glad to be here. We're glad to talk football with you. Technical issues be damned. But yeah, I agree with you, Adnan. It's still going. Okay, I'll try to figure out what's going on. I can try something
It'll
else
be
here
like a
too.
scavenger hunt.
Yeah, it will be. We're gonna figure it out for you folks. Okay. So, well, if it's not the fan, turn the fan back on because it's kind of warming here. All right, let's talk about Michael Bennett now, which I think was possibly. It's hard to say if that's going to be the more impactful injury or if it's. I think Wilcox probably is more impactful because we weren't really sure that Michael Bennett was even going to make the roster, but I mean, he could make the roster on a lot of teams. This is a quality depth guy at defensive tackle. He broke his ankle, so there's a possibility that he could return in 2019 at some point. But this basically makes his path to the roster very difficult at best. And to kind of quasi replace Bennett, the team brought in Alan Bailey, who was someone that we talked about earlier in the offseason after the team had visited with him. Um, and I think we were all basically universally in favor of the team bringing on Bailey for his talents. So while I try to track down these technical issues, Adnan, tell us your thoughts on the loss of Michael Bennett and the addition of Alan Bailey here.
I mean, like I mentioned, it's just personally it sucks.
Yeah.
Michael Bennett is just one of those guys who, and I felt so bad last season when we signed Michael Bennett and we couldn't even like find a picture of him. Oh, we had to
Oh,
use the picture of the monster trucks.
the monster truck. Yeah.
Whenever we wrote an article on Michael Bennett, because everyone thinks that, oh, it's the other Michael Bennett, the guy who was a Pro Bowler in Seattle, who's in Philadelphia right now. So it was always like, oh, this is the other Michael Bennett that we signed. And I just remember that one tweet he gave out, and it kind of broke my heart, where he's like, guys, I'm also the real Michael Bennett, and it just sucks from a personal standpoint. Someone who's just trying to make the roster. He's a fringe roster guy, and I think this will cost him a roster spot to have to now miss all of training camp, all of preseason, maybe into the season. I can't see him sticking on the Falcons roster, sticking. It probably hurts his chances of making any NFL roster this season, but he's someone who maybe down the line the team could look at if we do need some depth on the defensive line, like last season when Grady Jarrett went down. That's when we originally signed Michael Bennett to come in to cover it for 2 or 3 games, and then we ended up cutting him again. But maybe sometime in the future, but I don't see him making the roster as a result of this injury, as it is to say.
Yeah. I don't know, guys. Let me know if that's any better with this new microphone here. Changed to my laptop microphone, so we'll check it out. Yeah, it's really tough because I like Michael Bennett. I think the team liked him. I think Dan Quinn appreciated his work ethic and his, it's tough to be that fringe roster guy throughout the season. But Michael Bennett, when called upon, I thought played, solidly in reserve duty. I think he had a tackle for loss. I think he had several tackles in the games he played. So um, it's all right. It fixed it. Perfect. Yeah, it's really a tough injury, and I do think the team, like I said, I think the team will keep him on IR, so he'll continue to probably get his game checks, and that kind of thing. So tough break for Bennett, but we do get to see Alan Bailey with the Falcons now, which I think is fantastic. I think you were on the show when we talked about how much we wanted the Falcons to make this signing because Bailey is versatile. He's probably already the second or third best edge player on this team if we're talking like a strong side 5 tech. And I mean, I think he can play quality snaps as a 3 tech as well. We've heard Quinn say that they're looking at doing more 3-4 looks. So Alan Bailey as that 3-4 defensive end at the 3 tech. I think that's one of his best fits as a player. That's where he's been most effective as a pass rusher too. So I just really like the signing. I think it just the depth at defensive end after Steven Means went down was like a nightmare. Luckily, they added Adrian Claiborne, and now they've added Alan Bailey. And I personally feel a lot more comfortable with that group. I assume you do as well. But, I think Bailey is a guy that we're going to look back on this season as, thank God they signed this guy because I can't imagine what it would have looked like without him. So I didn't get a chance to see him practice because they signed him Monday night before I got there. He was not there on Tuesday, obviously, and I think he was basically working on a side field and doing kind of introductory stuff on Wednesday. So I didn't personally get a chance to see how he was used. I know some of our other intrepid reporters have been covering that, so definitely check out their takes. But it's a good signing. I'm really glad that they were able to get it done. I think it was important to get a veteran guy in there and a guy who's coming off a career season. I mean, it's not like he's a slouch or anything like that. And it was really interesting to hear Quinn talk about the addition of Bailey because he was like, oh, yeah, we really wanted to sign him at the beginning of free agency, but we kind of had all this money earmarked for extensions, earmarked for all kinds of stuff like that. And we couldn't do it at the time, but I kind of just Quinn was like, well, I just kind of kept sending him texts throughout the summer, like, hey, we still want you, like, just stick around, and we're gonna sign you when we can. And apparently it worked. This was the same strategy Quinn adopted with Dwight Freeney, and apparently it also worked for Freeney. So, gone are the days where the Falcons are not a destination for free agent players. I think Quinn's influence and the general success of the team over the last several years has made us a destination for players to actually want to
And
come.
also, don't underestimate Bob Sutton's influence too. He was
Yeah.
Alan Bailey's defensive coordinator as early as last season. He's now a senior advisor on the Falcons coaching staff. And Dan Quinn credited Bob Sutton's influence in helping to lure Alan Bailey to the team.
Yeah, that's very important too. Bob Sutton, kind of an under the radar signing because he wasn't signed to be a defensive coach, really. I think he's like an assistant, but he's supposed to be the game management coach, like the clock manager and stuff like that. And he has a ton of experience. I know if you look at his record as a defensive coordinator, it's not exactly stellar, but the man's been a coach for a very long time. He has a ton of experience at all levels. So I think as a game management coach, he brings a lot to the table. So hopefully we'll see some improved decision making because that was one of the most frustrating aspects of I think Dan Quinn as a coach was
The most frustrating.
His kind of
The
inexperience
most, oh my God.
with that kind of situation. And you never think about it until it actually happens, right? You never realize how big of a deal that is. But
I mean, shout out to Dan Quinn for recognizing that, though.
Yeah.
And for it takes a big man to be able to recognize one's flaws and to fix them, to take steps in mitigating those flaws and fixing them, as opposed to just, being ego driven, being like, oh yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I'm just fine with that. I can do that, when it's clear that you're not.
Yeah, I agree. And Quinn remarked similar to that. I can't remember who asked the question, but someone asked him at the press conference, what were some things that you learned, like when you lost all these players, what were some things that you learned, and specifically asking about safety. And I think they were kind of inferring, like, why didn't you switch out Jordan Richards when you did? Like, why didn't you play Neesman or Ishmael or somebody else, before, like, subjecting everyone to, like, 6 games of Jordan Richards? And he basically came out and said, like, looking back, like, I realized I made a mistake. Like, hindsight's 2020. Like, there are a lot of things that I wish I could have gone back and done differently. And that's why this year, the depth chart looks different. Like, that's why this year we brought in all these depth safeties. That's why we have all these players. So I think Quinn has that characteristic that he can see his own flaws and take criticism and change, because in the NFL, you would think that's a given, but it's not. There's so many coaches that just do the same thing. I mean, look at what's happening in New York, for God's sake. Like, Dave Gettleman, stuck in his ways. Let's get, nose tackle in the first, draft a quarterback in the first round, and not even have a competition. Like, thank God we're not New York Giants fans. But that's a conversation for next offseason, when we have nothing else to talk about. We got plenty to talk about tonight, folks. So a lot of questions.
I mean,
Go ahead.
I hear the Giants are having a special promotion for their season ticket holders, where if they call your seat number where you're sitting at, you get to come out onto the field and play wide receiver, because their wide receivers are just dropping like flies.
Yeah, at the same that does bring up kind of a tweet from today. I think, Mark, there's some kind of mainstream outlet that was suggesting that the Giants should try to trade for Mohamed Sanu. I think Mark Zeno picked it up, and I am interested your thoughts on that potential trade scenario. Like, what would you need to get to consider that, or would you not consider it? Period.
I wouldn't consider it for what they would probably offer. For a wide receiver who's a bit older, Mohamed Sanu isn't exactly like young. He's not exactly young at all. They'd probably offer like something like a 4th or 5th rounder. He's on his last year of his contract. I probably wouldn't consider it unless they offer something mind-blowing like a 2nd rounder.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we need Mohamed Sanu this season, and there's no point in trading him at this point in the offseason.
Yeah, I agree. I think what makes the Falcons offense special right now is that trio of wide receivers. And obviously, I think that we're going to look at their running back group and say this is better than we thought going into the season. And I think we all know Austin Hooper is fantastic. So, like, with the wide receivers they have now, they can weather the season of injuries and still have a strong group by the time they get to the end. But if they were to trade Sanu, at that point, they're like one injury away from having one good receiver basically on the field. So I think keeping that special aspect. I mean, it was the same thing with Tevin Coleman when they had Freeman and Coleman. It was like, well, we could trade Coleman, but that's what makes this team really special is that tandem and the stuff they can do with them. And I think this year it's that trio of wide receivers. We're going to see Calvin Ridley really take off, and Sanu is just going to be able to feast in the slot. So I agree with you. I would have it would have to be like a second rounder for me to even consider it. And with the Giants basically low key rebuilding, I just don't see them offering picks for any players because I think they're low key trying to tank, uh, which doesn't make any sense when you just picked your quote unquote franchise quarterback. But it's Dave
Oh my
Gettleman,
God.
so we could go on all night about Dave Gettleman, folks. But I know
I
you
forgot
guys.
about I forgot about the Daniel Jones pick. All right,
Yes,
let's move on.
let's move on before we. Yeah,
We can talk about the Giants' missteps and misfortunes for like three
yeah,
shows.
it's enough content, for everything. All right, Devin Siege, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you, brother. What do we think about Debo and Grady's deals? I guess that those kind of happened in between shows. So um, let's start with Grady's because that one happened first. This has been talked about. I know. The Falcoholic podcast, they talked about it. We've seen Falcon fans talk about it, but you haven't gotten our take. So our take is basically the same. Like, great deal. I think Grady's came in about what I expected it to be. I thought it would be between 17 and 18 million. So I think that's very fair for Grady. And I think not panicking about the extension was the right move. Of course, Adam Schefter, he gave all of us a heart attack by tweeting out in the morning that, oh, yeah, no, they're not going to get a deal done. It's very depressing. And then, like, 10 minutes later, tweeted out, there's some hope now. Yeah, thanks, Schefter. Just
Covering his tracks.
Yep, exactly. But I thought the amount was very fair, and I think you could make an argument that Grady Jarrett's the best player on the Falcons defense. You just don't let those players leave your team, or you end up as the New York Giants. So, or worse, you could be the Cardinals last year too. So, what do you think about Grady's deal? We'll talk about that first.
Fantastic. The money, it was super fair. Very good. He wasn't going to get Aaron Donald money. Aaron Donald is an alien from Area 51. He's just the best, in my opinion, maybe even the best player in the league. I always say he's up there with Pat Mahomes as 1A and 1B for the best player in the NFL. But I can't understate the importance of getting a deal done, just getting it done, because had he played under the franchise tag this year, there would be no cap to do Deion Jones's deal. You still have to do Julio Jones. You promised Julio Jones an extension. So had we not gotten that deal done with Grady Jarrett, there would be no extension for Deion Jones. Now all of a sudden you're going into next offseason with Deion Jones having to re-sign Deion Jones, having to re-sign Grady Jarrett, having Keanu O'Neal in the last year of his contract, probably looking for an extension, having Austin Hooper needing to re-sign him. You're having to re-sign all of these key players. And even if you take Austin Hooper out, you're talking about your three best defensive players, and it's just a Herculean task to try and re-sign all three of those in one offseason.
Mm-hmm.
And it's to the point where you risk losing them. Whereas also Grady Jarrett, if he wanted to leave, he probably could have left because the franchise tag would have been incredibly
Yeah.
expensive for him
Mm-hmm.
next offseason. And you maybe could have been in a situation where you had to pick between Deion Jones and Grady Jarrett who to re-sign, and that would have just been catastrophic. It's
Yeah.
cataclysmic to lose one of the players of their caliber to free agency for nothing. You want to keep those players. So re-signing Grady Jarrett, it was massive. Don't let
Yeah.
anyone tell you that that wasn't one of the most important things that we've done this offseason. And I think it's the single most important thing we've done all offseason because that was the first domino to fall. You saw it before training camp even began. They
Mm-hmm.
re-signed Deion Jones to a fantastic contract. He's making what, 3 or 4 mil a year less than CJ Mosley, whom he is
Hmm.
far superior to.
Yeah, yeah. CJ Mosley can't cover. That's a great segue into the Debo Jones contract, which honestly, like asking me to pick between Deion Jones and Grady Jarrett's like asking me to pick between children. Like you just don't make me do that, man. That's cruel. But like those are the two most important players on the Falcons defense right now. I think if I had to choose, gun to my head type of situation, I would choose Deion because I think that the defense just doesn't work. Period, without him in it. Um, hopefully we can get a depth guy that can kind of fill the same shoes. Like hopefully Jermaine Grace will turn out in that role. I like his potential a lot, but you know how it was last year. Like Duke Riley, the guy they kind of handpicked to be Deion Jones's kind of backup slash partner in crime. Duke Riley has been terrible. He just has not developed, which is unfortunate because athletically, I mean, he's not quite Deion Jones level, but he's very talented athletically. So that's not the issue. But just the defense functions. It's like a beautiful masterpiece. It's like a play. You have to get everybody doing their roles correctly, and without Deion as the star of the show, it just doesn't really come together. And to get him at that price, because I think I tweeted like a couple hours before he signed that like, oh yeah, I wonder if they are angling to get him on a cheaper deal because he's coming off like a significant injury, and he's still under contract for very little. So would Deion's camp be willing to trade $2 to $3 million a year to be able to get that long-term security, and the fact that he's probably going to sign another deal before he retires, like he'll have another shot at a payday. So they don't necessarily have to maximize that money right now. And that's exactly what happened. I think he signed for like $14.25 million a year. $3 million less than CJ Mosley, who, don't get me wrong, I mean, CJ Mosley is a quality linebacker, but he's not as talented as Deion Jones. I mean, you could say Mosley's a better run defender, but run defense is not that's not what gets you paid in the NFL anymore. Like, it's can you cover Christian McCaffrey? Can you cover Alvin Kamara? Can you cover these elite running backs that are going to shred you?
It's a new league.
Yeah.
It's an evolved league.
Mm-hmm. And yeah.
And the thing about it is that was $57 million over 4 years that was extended to the last year of his contract this season. They didn't rip up that deal that he had this season. Mm-hmm. That's a key element in all of this because that's $14.25 million annually of the extension. But he was slated to make just, I think, around $1 million this season. So that contract is added to that. So overall, he's actually making $58 million over 5 years, which when you average that out, it's down to a measly $11.6 million per year, which is just an absolute heist.
Yeah, if you include this year. Yeah, exactly.
Caliber.
No, you're 100% right. It really is. Just the freaking Jets, man. CJ Mosley's deal. I mean, it was terrible, and I think basically every NFL team kind of recognized that they weren't going to let CJ Mosley's deal dictate the market. Like, it's basically like, look, you can go play for the Jets, you can go play for the Cardinals, or you can play for us and compete. You can go chase your $2 to $3 million more a year somewhere else. But and I think what both these deals really illustrate is what I touched on earlier with Alan Bailey is like these players want to play here. Like Grady Jarrett's not looking to go test the market because he likes Dan Quinn. He likes this defense. This is the perfect fit for him. I mean, I was at practice and one of the things that I really stood out to me was that the atmosphere was great. Like they had the music bumping. The speakers were not great, if I'm being honest. Like the bass was a little, it was busting out. It's all right. But like the atmosphere was fun. You could tell the players were enjoying themselves, and you could say, oh well, who cares if they're enjoying themselves? They're getting paid, but it matters because if you're not having fun playing the game of football, you're not going to play as well as you could. At the end of the day, you should be enjoying this.
It's the equivalent to someone going into work, and if they enjoy going into work or not, like it doesn't matter how much you're getting paid. If you enjoy going to work, you're going to want to stay at that job.
You're exactly right. And if you enjoy work, like if you enjoy your work and you're not overly stressed and all that, studies have shown that your productivity is increased, and that's for office jobs and stuff like that. But I think that the same principle can apply to sports and anything. Like I think it's common sense. Like if you enjoy what you're doing, you're going to do it better. And
Yeah,
I can tell you that they were having a good time.
yeah, it's human nature.
Yeah.
But I think you make a really great point with maybe he did give the Falcons a bit of a discount for that long-term security, and I think that has something to do with the fact that he just suffered that long-term injury this past season, where maybe now he's thinking to himself like, what if that happens again and I don't have that kind of security? Which I
Yep.
mean, obviously, you hope it doesn't happen to
Of
anyone,
course.
like
Mhm.
ever at all. But that does play a role. That did give the team a little bit of leverage where maybe Deion Jones went to his agent and he said, hey, it's fine for me to take a little bit less if we can get this done, if we can get this deal long term and secured. And now he's under contract for the next 5 seasons as an Atlanta Falcon. Grady
Mhm.
Jarrett is under contract for the next 4 seasons. And like you mentioned, they'll both have an opportunity. They'll be young enough to have
Yep.
a chance at the second bite of that cherry, to get a chance to be paid again at the end of those deals and get, maybe one last big time payday in the NFL. And we're pro player here. We want the players to make their money. This is a brutal game to play,
Yep.
but and this is just a win for all sides. They get their
Mhm.
money, they stay in a Falcons uniform long term, and we can get to work without the distractions of, a contract extension looming and lingering.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think you know that's probably the most underrated aspect of Dimitrov's tenure is that this is a man that the Falcons don't have a lot of drama. Like I think the closest we've gotten to contract drama was last year with Julio, and that ended up not really being a big deal. Um, and this year, like Julio trusts Dimitrov and Blank so much that he doesn't even care that he doesn't have a deal. Like he's like, nope, I'll go to camp. That's fine. I don't care. Like we've got Zeke Elliott and Melvin Gordon saying, I'm not going to play. Period, unless you give me this
Zeke Elliott
contract.
is in Cabo right now. They're saying he's gonna hold out while in Mexico. He's not even
Oh
gonna be
God.
near training camp.
Yes. Hey man, do what you got to do. Like somebody's got to save the running back market, okay?
Oh yeah,
And if
bro.
they don't do it, no one will.
I am
So
completely for these running backs, especially to get paid as much as possible.
yeah,
That is just, oh my God, I would not want to be a running back.
no, it's that's a conversation for a full podcast. Like why running backs are getting shafted and why these
Yeah,
these elite running backs have to set the bar as high as they can so that other running backs can get paid. Otherwise, no one's getting paid.
yeah, and I completely respect what Le'Veon Bell did last season because
Mhm.
what the Steelers' strategy was. They were going to run him into the ground. They would have given him over 400 touches last
Yep.
season and just thrown him to the curb as a used up running back and let other teams leverage that against him in contract negotiations.
Yep.
So I completely respect the fact that he held out throughout the entire season and he ended up getting what he wanted. I have
Yeah.
no sympathy for the Steelers.
No, no. I mean, it's like when you tag a player that many times, you like, what do you expect? Like the tag is just awful
Yeah,
in so many ways. So
and they PR'd the contract that they like offered him. They
yeah,
they used the PR against him where they're like, oh, they offered this much money, but in reality, they only offered like $15 million guaranteed,
yeah,
and the guaranteed money is the most important thing in all of that. You can't look at base salary in the NFL.
yep, yeah. No, guys, just we've been over on the show, but for new listeners, never look at the full value of the contract. You're never gonna see that ever. Ever will you see the full value of that contract be paid out. Because if you play well, they'll extend you before the contract expires. So you'll get new money. And if you don't play well, they'll cut you and you will never see that money. So guaranteed money is the only thing that matters, period. And signing bonus and stuff like that matter too. But that's all rolled. Signing bonuses rolled into guaranteed money. So you have to maximize your guarantees and it was typical of the Steelers to be like, look, we offered you 15 million a year. What are you complaining about? Well, if you can cut me after 1 year, because that's what it sounds like if the guaranteed money was so low and not have any dead cap, then what am I doing here? So it's a rough market for running backs. It's a position where you really only need a handful to be good, and there's great ones coming out every single year. It's probably the most. It's like the opposite of quarterback. Like there's every college team has a good running back, and 10% of them can play in the NFL, and that's just more running backs than there's room for in the NFL, and that's causing the price to go down. It's unfortunate, but let's get to some more of y'all's questions before we go on about the running back market for an obscenely long amount of time.
Hashtag save the running back.
Yes, hashtag. Yeah, okay. Kojak Nantucket talk about the new 3-4 looks. So I did notice them running 3-4 occasionally in 11 on 11s. I mean, there was maybe 10 reps total in practice, but it was something that they ran. It won't look that weird to you if you've watched the Falcons a lot, because in the 3-4 under or the 4-3 under that they normally run, all you have to do to make it a 3-4 look is just drop one of the running backs down to the line of scrimmage. That's all you have to do to change it, because the Leo in the 4-3 under basically functions as a 3-4 outside linebacker to begin with. So it's really the 4-3 under scheme that Dan Quinn runs is basically multiple to begin with. That's just how it kind of works. But yeah, now that they have the personnel to do that with Alan Bailey in the fold, with a lot of good D tackles. I mean, Adrian Claiborne is at a higher, he's a higher weight defensive end. He can play that 3-4 defensive end role. We've seen him rush from the interior with a lot of success. They kind of have the personnel where it makes sense to run more of those pure 3-4 looks. And I know Adnan, you didn't necessarily get to see a lot of that yourself, but what do you think about the idea of them giving more 3-4 looks?
I'm fine with the idea. It's one of those things where you can throw something new, add a new look toward the opposing offense. You're not just lining up in the same base defense over and over again. But it's one of those things where in the NFL and in Dan Quinn's scheme, they'll be running the nickel 70% of the time. So that's the primary defense to really look at. That's the defense that's going to be making the money. But it's I'm completely fine now that we have the personnel. You're able to just throw a new look, at the opposing team. And it's something that could help when the defense is in a bit of a rut next season. If things aren't getting it, if the 4-3 isn't getting it done. And we've seen it plenty of times in years past with Dan Quinn where they just keep banging their head against the wall over and over again. If the opposing offense is having success, there weren't that many adjustments being made to where now you can throw that little bit of a wrinkle at the opposing offense and make that bit of an adjustment if you really have to.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, that was the kind of interesting thing, is that we've kind of been looking at this depth chart defensive line, and it's like they don't really have that many pure defensive ends. Like they've got Beasley and Tack, and that's really kind of it. I mean, I guess if you throw in Chris Odom or one of the other, like Austin Larkin or one of the UDFAs, you could say they have more. But like both Claiborne and Alan Bailey are guys that can play inside as well. And then if you count, Rashid Hageman as a defensive tackle, if you think he's going to make the roster, he's played on the edge at times at 5 tech. So he could potentially take snaps there.
Kaminsky should be a defensive end, but for some reason they're converting him to DT. We need to talk about Kaminsky because he was one of the more impressive players I saw in one-on-one drills, which makes sense because he's a freakish athlete. But but it's exactly the point. Like they have a lot, like the defensive end, defensive tackle position name isn't that meaningful for the Falcons, because except for a few players like Grady Jarrett, Tyler Davison, Deidrin Sanat. These are all pure defensive tackles. Vic Beasley is a pure outside linebacker defensive end. But I mean, we've seen Tack getting interior looks. We've seen Claiborne getting interior looks. Alan Bailey's definitely going to get interior looks. So it's kind of an interesting defense. Vic in coverage is actually solid. It's Blackbird blitz. I want to put that out there because I think that's an underrated aspect of his game. And if he could tackle, I think him playing strong side linebacker on occasion, if he doesn't make it as a pass rusher, I thought that could be a fit for him. But let's not get into Vic Beasley. Let's not get into Vic Beasley. That's a rabbit hole that will take up the entire stream. But I normally love just mentioning Vic Beasley whenever Eric is around, just to see his reaction.
Just to trigger Eric. Yeah, we love you, Eric. Good luck. Good luck. It's going to be interesting to see how how they incorporate it, but I don't think it's a very big change. I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like they already ran 3-4 looks in the past, not very often, so we'll probably see it more often now with the personnel they have. But like I said, the 4-3 under is basically like a 3-4 when you drop down the Sam linebacker. So it's not the naming of it is less important. I feel by my opinion, but that's also for base defense, which is like what 30-40% of your snaps maybe, because they're going to be a nickel or dime
Yeah.
the rest of it. So
This will be a big time conversation 20 years ago or even 15, 10 years ago, but in today's NFL, it's all about the coverage, it's all about the extra DBs, it's all about nickel defense, dime defense. That's your it's not your base defense, but it's the new era base.
yeah, um, yeah, like the base defense, like, and that's the thing that people need to realize is like base defense doesn't really matter that much anymore. It's more about can you stop the run and nickel because that's the thing these days. Is
Yeah.
three wide receiver sets. The Rams
And
ran three wide receivers 98% of the time or something.
yeah, and can
So
you rush four?
yeah, which is what they have struggled to do in the past. But the nickel package, they're probably still going to use four to rush, and they'll probably keep two linebackers. So keep that in mind. All right, I know someone asked about Duke Riley, and we've given our take on Duke Riley before. Me personally, I think that Duke Riley is probably not going to make the roster because we've seen how good Jermaine Grace can be. We've seen Bruce Carter, I think, is a lock. Bruce Carter was getting starting reps with Deion Jones. Deion Jones was sitting out the team reps because he's still kind of being eased back in. And Bruce Carter was getting the starting reps in his spot. Bruce Carter had an interception in coverage. Like, he's a solid guy. The minute they started giving him snaps instead of Duke Riley, the defense looked so much better. I mean, it was
So much better.
and he's really the only veteran on the roster outside of like Deion Jones and Devondre Campbell. So I think Carter's spot is safe, and that leaves basically one open spot, unless they keep six, which could happen. I kind of doubt it. So Duke Riley has to beat out Jermaine Grace first. Kamal Ishmael is going to be a strong safety now, so that's one less person. But Trey Crawford has been impressive. I think he's potentially a long-term option to replace Campbell, excuse me, if they can't re-sign Campbell next year. And then now we have Stephon Anthony in the mix, who's also that guy that can kind of play Sam and can do some stuff for you. Super athletic player. So Riley has to prove he's better than like 3 or 4 other quality linebackers. And I think that the team has basically said, like, all right, he's not getting a free pass anymore. Like, we're past the development window. This is your chance to show us you deserve to be here because we're not just going to carry you into the season. And I personally, I don't think that Duke is going to end up making the cut. He has the talent to be a starter in the NFL. Like, his athletic talent is there, but he's just never been able to put it together and succeed in a game scenario. So what are your thoughts on Duke Riley's chances?
I think he will end up making the roster, and not because he's this deserving big-time linebacker who's developed, who's just gone through an off-season of work and he's come back a new player. I think he'll make the roster because it'll just be a fringe battle between him and some of those fringe linebackers. Like you said, Bruce Carter, he'll be on the roster. The team needs him. The team needed him last season. He stepped in, great veteran presence. He showcased himself. But Duke Riley, I think it'll be one of those things where it'll be him fighting against those fringe pieces. And I think Dan Quinn, just like with Vic Beasley, he was a high hand-selected pick by Dan Quinn. And I think Quinn will go in with the mentality of, oh, we can still fix him. We can still, turn him into this player we thought that he was going to be. And at this point, I don't think he will end up being that, because Duke Riley, he's been able to get into the spots that he's needed to get whenever he's played. but he just hasn't ever been able to make that final tackle. And that's like saying, oh, yeah, this wide receiver has done a great job of getting to the spot, but then he just drops the pass every single
Great route
time.
runner, can't catch the ball.
Yeah,
Yeah,
great route runner. He has, fluid movement, but can't catch the what's the point then? Like, the
yeah.
play's over.
Hmm.
So I think he'll end up making it just because I think this will be the last season where he's going to be able to ride out that reputation of being, I know, technically a third round pick, but he was our second round pick that season. And I think Dan Quinn will just give it one more ride to try and develop him.
Yeah, I could definitely see that happening. I mean, look at what happened with Vic Beasley, right? That's basically case in point to why that could happen. I hope Duke Riley legitimately earns his roster spot. I hope that he shows improvement. I hope that he's strong in the
That
preseason,
would
and
be great.
I hope that he finally turns it on because
I
they need him to do that if possible.
I would love to be wrong on this. I would love to be wrong on Vic Beasley. I'd love for Vic Beasley to go out and get 14 sacks this
Yep,
season.
that is that
Uh,
third round comp pick.
Yep, for sure. And just to say about Foy Oluokun, Foy, a roster spot is his.
Yeah,
He's most definitely going to be the he's might even be a starter this season.
yeah,
I think
no, I think he
he'll
will
be a
be.
starter this
Yeah.
season. Like he beat out Duke Riley last season. He showed out. He was third in the NFL in tackle percentage
Hmm.
behind Leighton Vander Esch and his name is slipping me. The linebacker from the Colts, who was a first
Oh
team
yeah,
All
yeah.
Pro,
What's his
Darius
name?
Leonard.
Yeah, Darius Leonard. Yeah.
Yeah, Darius Leonard and Leighton Vander Esch were the only players in the NFL that had a higher tackle percentage than Foy Oluokun last season. And by tackle percentage, this is a next gen stat looking at the percentage of snaps that he played, which resulted in a tackle, in him getting a tackle. So I mean, Foy Oluokun, he got the job done last season. He was a diamond in the rough, late round pick. I think we got him in the 6th round. And Foy is the guy that we're developing, that we're grooming, where maybe he'll even be the Devondre Campbell replacement moving forward if we can't re-sign Campbell.
Yeah. No, and I totally agree. Oluokun and Devondre were both starting in base. I think in base Carter was starting. In nickel, I think it was Devondre, Oluokun, and Carter mostly kind of rotating. But Oluokun, I think, is the better of those three players in coverage. Obviously, Devondre's specialty is covering tight ends, but Oluokun is kind of a jack of all trades linebacker. I think the starting duo will be Deion Jones and Foye in nickel. And I think Campbell will get plenty of snaps. Don't get me wrong, but I think that Oluokun is that kind of will type player. I think he and Deion Jones can both play Will or Mike. It doesn't really matter. And Campbell's more that traditional Sam that can cover the tight end and be a little bit more physical up front. So um, yeah, Oluokun is totally safe. There's no threat to his roster spot. I don't think there's really a threat to his starting job either. He's gonna start and be good for this team. And what a steal in the 6th round. I mean, a starting linebacker in the 6th round. I mean, that's one of the most underrated things I think about Dimitrov because people focus on the first round busts because of course you would because that's a pick you kind of have to nail, and I get it. But under Quinn and Dimitrov, their partnership, they found so many day 3 starters. Like it's just uncanny. I mean, that's what makes you into a championship roster is getting these guys late and turning them into quality pieces for your team.
And that's one of the biggest sources of growth that I've seen since Dan Quinn came in. We've gotten so many late round steals on defense, just like it's been incredible. I think he was presiding over the team when we picked Grady Jarrett.
Yep,
Correct me if I'm
that
wrong
was his
there.
first draft. Yeah, 2015. He
Uh,
and Vic came in at the same time.
yeah, Grady Jarrett in the 5th round, DeMonte Casey in the 5th round, Foy Oluokun in the 6th round, even Deion Jones in the 2nd round. Everyone was calling that pick a bust the day after
They didn't like
the
Keanu Neal
draft.
either. Yeah,
Yeah, no one like the analysts gave us like an F for that draft, that incredible 2016 draft. And I just remember before Quinn came in, it's after the 2nd round, you're not getting anyone who's going to really contribute, and that had something to do with the fact that Mike Smith uh, preferred veterans who were washed up and over the hill over giving young guys a chance. Mike Smith wasn't great in terms of development, even though he came from that defensive background. But before it was just like I was thinking to myself, you might as well just trade every single pick after the second round to trade up in the first and second because no one is going to really make a contribution. But now you just never know. Now you're having these big time contributors and star players whom you've just gotten diamonds in the rough out of.
Yep. Yeah, those cheap late round contracts are what allow you to keep your roster together when you're paying all these top end talent players. You need those players to fill up, a percentage of your starting spots, or you're not going to be able to keep the team financially viable. You can't afford to pay someone at every position. You just can't. So them continuing to hit on these draft picks is going to be a big part of if this team can kind of continue this run of success. And I mean, obviously for this year, it doesn't really matter, but going forward, the money's going to get very tight. And it's going to be a struggle at times with the cap, but we have no reason to believe that Dan Quinn and Thomas Dimitroff can't handle it. I did lose your video, Adnan.
Just a second,
Nope.
just a second.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Oh, sorry,
Yep,
I
you're
just
back.
had to move
You're back.
locations.
No, it's
That
fine.
was intentional.
Okay, it was intentional. Oh, sorry. I shouldn't have said anything. Yeah. But yeah, guys, it's been
They would have never caught on to us.
no. They can see it, unfortunately.
Yeah,
but
of course.
no, it's no big deal. But yeah, I'm not concerned because they've shown the ability to consistently hit on like at least one late round guy every year.
That's huge. That's
huge.
massive.
Yeah. And I think we're going to see it again this year. I think Kendall Sheffield, I saw a rep of him in coverage on Sanu, and he was right there. I mean, he was right with Sanu, almost picked it off, but Sanu, of course, with his just crazy hands, like just reached in there and kind of grabbed it and took it right out of the hands of Sheffield. But the coverage was great. I think he's going to end up being the starting nickel for this team going forward. I didn't really see much of Jordan Miller, but I think that's a guy that was injured prior to the draft, so his stock took a hit. But I think he could be a potential cornerback 4 type of guy.
I saw some videos of Jordan Miller just balling out for a play here and there. So he's apparently had a very impressive training camp. And I mean, I hate that I haven't been able to go down there. Every year I go to at least 2 or 3 of them, but this season I just haven't been able to. So
yeah,
I mean, I appreciate you just giving us that insider knowledge.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, look, like I don't know how many of you guys watching are tuning in for the first time because of my training camp coverage, but you guys were awesome. I mean, that was a lot of fun to cover. I didn't realize it would blow up kind of like it did, but yeah, going forward, I'm gonna try to go for the whole first week every year going forward because I know you guys are craving the content at this time of year, and
it is July and it has been dry.
It's been bad. It's been bad, and I'm intrepid enough to get out there in the rain and take practice videos. And I can report that I'm going to be getting a new phone tomorrow, so you won't have any more wavy videos. I don't know what the hell is going on with that, but it was weird. At any rate, continuing on our discussion of Falcons football, the Foye and all these late run guys. I know with defensive backs in particular, like I'm trying to think. I think one of the most successful positions that Dimitroff has drafted has been defensive back, especially in the Quinn years where the only bust has been Jalen Collins, I guess, which was due to off-field stuff, not his talent. I mean, he was looking like a starting caliber corner before he started to really get derailed.
We held on to that game, which we won't speak of.
Never.
That Jalen Collins pick, even after everything that had happened, I don't think we could have even consider that a bust because Jalen Collins balled out in the second half of 2016 when Desmond Trufant was injured, and he played an intricate role in getting us to that game. Yeah,
he did. I mean, True went down and Collins stepped up, man. He stepped up in a big way. Like I feel like we had to draft Isaiah Oliver because Collins didn't pan out, and I don't think that was a talent issue. And it's so hard to predict off-field stuff. They took a risk on Collins, and I think it was the right call in hindsight. But like, you can just never predict this stuff. But other than Collins, since Dan Quinn's got here, have they missed on a single defensive back prospect? I mean, it's Keanu Neal, Demonte Casey.
Fantastic picks.
Yeah, both like,
I
you
guess the
know,
jury is still technically out on Isaiah Oliver. We'll
yeah,
have to see
yeah,
what he
it's his
does
second
this
season.
season.
Yeah.
And I mean, of course, you're not like I'm not saying anything negative about Oliver.
No, no.
He had last season, it was just baptism by fire for him. You just throw him to the wolves. And defensive back, cornerback especially, I think is maybe the hardest position to transition to from college to the NFL because the wide receivers that you're facing week in and week out in the NFL are vastly superior than those in college football. The
Yep.
athleticism, the size. Like imagine going from covering a standard Big Ten wide receiver to now having to come to the NFL and cover Julio Jones, for example. And,
Yeah.
that's an extreme case. There's only one Julio, but that's just the point I'm trying to make.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the same at every position, really. But at wide receiver and corner, I think that's a one to point out because that position is truly like a one-on-one. Like you have to cover this person or you have to go up against this person, and it's so intense. Like the change in competition there. So it's a lot of projection and stuff like that with players. But Quinn and Dimitrov have proven that they are good at scouting defensive backs. Defensive line, it's still a mixed bag, but we'll see what's going on there.
And also, I just wanted to add to Kendall Sheffield. We kind of got sidetracked, and we moved on past the point. But Kendall Sheffield, keep an eye on him. He is maybe the fastest player out of this draft. He is
Mhm.
maybe the fastest draft prospect in this entire class. We just haven't really heard about it because he was hurt for his combine. I think
Yep.
he hurt his bicep or
Yeah.
strained or
Yeah.
torn bicep or something where he didn't end up being able to run the 40, but he runs a solid 4.3. I'm talking
Oh yeah.
low 4.3,
No, I think he
maybe
runs in the
high
four
4.2.
twos. Yeah, he said he's
Yeah,
run a 4.28 before. So, um,
but he is crazy fast.
yep.
So he's someone moving forward where Dan Quinn is gonna know what to do with that speed in his defense. He craves that
Hmm.
kind of speed, fast and physical.
Yeah, and it's like Sheffield needs to work on his physicality to be what Brian Poole was as the nickel, but Sheffield is the opposite of Brian Poole when it comes to like athletic ability. Like
And he also won't let a 40-year-old Drew Brees spin him out.
no, like Sheffield can get anywhere in a flash. And his biggest issues as a corner were when plays got behind him and he just had to turn around and look at the ball and find the ball and that sort of thing. If you're playing in the nickel and doing your job correctly and you're not getting a bunch of downfield routes run, which it can happen sometimes, but I think Sheffield's perfect for the slot because he can keep the play in front of him. He can close really quickly. He's got that elite change of direction ability. I think he's like a tailor-made player for that slot corner role, and I think that in 2020 we may see him take on that starting job, and I think he can truly be a Chris Harris level slot corner in time. His
Ronald
tech,
Darby.
yeah, Ronald Darby, yeah, sorry. Um,
You're good.
I forget. Denver has three good corners. I get them all mixed up, but
That
um,
was three incredible corners.
yeah,
Talib, Darby, and Harris. That was just shut
yeah,
down.
crazy. But that slot is becoming more and more important every single season, and I think that he really gives the team an elite matchup option
And
there.
he's already the best player in the division to come out of Ohio State.
Oh, that Michael Thomas slander. I love it. Love it. All right. Got to get to
You
some
know,
more questions. Yeah. Go ahead.
Quinn
Go
is
ahead.
holding out already. Well, I just wanted to laugh at the fact that he's
Yeah.
holding the Saints hostage right now.
Yep. Go get your money, Michael Thomas. Get
Yeah,
as much as you can, buddy.
Saints give him that 23 mil a year.
There you go. He wants it. He asked for it. All right. Perfect. Okay. I know someone asked about the running back group behind Freeman. Chris Nestor, I know, asked a question. Somebody else earlier did as well. Apologize. But yeah. Yeah, and Kojak Pentucket just said it. Like, Brian Hill has arguably been the most impressive of the three or four, I guess, like guys competing for depth spots. Brian Hill has been awesome. He's been really, really solid. He had like a minor injury, I think, the first or second day, but he was back practicing by day three, so there's no issues there. And honestly, I thought Ito Smith has been good as well. He has a very similar style to Devonta Freeman. So the two of them are kind of interchangeable. If Freeman has to take some reps off, Ito can do the same things, can run the same routes, can has that same style. And I think honestly, Quadri Olson is what the team want. He's who they want to be their next Tevin Coleman. He's bigger. He's a little more physical. He has better balance than Coleman did. He's not as fast, but to be fair, Quadri Olson runs like a 4.5 something for a 220 something pound running back. So he's surprisingly quick. He almost housed a run in 11 on 11s because he got through to the second level and just took off. But yeah, I mean, with those, we've got Ito, we've got Quadri Olson, both of whom are safe, and then we've got Brian Hill, who I think is kind of demanded his fourth spot. Tony Brooks James, the undrafted guy, is solid as well. He would have to be extremely impressive, I think, to beat out Ito Olson or Brian Hill. But as a practice squad guy, I think Tony Brooks James has some potential. What are your thoughts on that running back group as it stands right now?
I love our running back depth. I love all three of those guys as backups, and it's entertaining now, this training camp battle, because all of these guys are pretty much in the same boat. They're all fourth or fifth round draft picks. They've all been drafted by this same regime, so there is no favoritism shown to someone who, oh, this is my player whom I drafted against this guy. But I love all of them as depth. But if Devontae Freeman went down, I would worry about running back as a position as a whole for the Atlanta Falcons, because I wouldn't be comfortable with any of those three players, Ito Smith, Ollison, or Brian Hill, to be the every down starter. And that, I guess we'd run a running back by committee, but I just don't know how. I just don't like thinking of the idea of how effective that would be.
Yeah.
It's big. It's huge for Devontae Freeman to stay healthy this season, this entire season, because Devontae Freeman, he can take the majority of the touches. And then we can run sort of a de facto running back by committee right behind him. Maybe limit his touches, have Ollison with his physicality on the goal line, have Ito Smith come in for some third downs. Ito Smith caught 84% of his passes last season. He had an 84% catch percentage on 34 targets last season. So he's very proficient in catching the ball. Very solid pass blocker, which is one of the most important things if you want to be a third down running back.
Yeah.
Where we can limit Devontae Freeman, keep him fresh for the second half of games, keep him fresh for the second half of the season. But if he goes down at any point, I would worry about running back as a position for this team.
Yeah, it's really just because we don't know how these guys are going to look with significant reps. Ollison's also a very good pass protector, but we haven't seen how he's going to do in the NFL. Ito, I think, can be solid as Devontae Freeman's kind of replacement, but it will be a running back by committee if Freeman were to miss significant time. I think, and you're exactly right. Like, if the Falcons are as good as we think they'll be, and it's kind of, we're seeing shades of 2016, except the defense is maybe better. Maybe the offense probably won't be as good, but the defense
Matt
maybe will be
Ryan's
better.
talking like it's 2016. He's been incredibly confident this off season.
The talent is ridiculous. Like, this offense is totally stacked. It's an under the radar candidate to be the number one offense again. And really it's the offensive line, right? Like, that's going to be the catalyst for everything.
For sure. For sure. And it's shades. Everything I've seen, and I'm sorry to cut you off,
no, you're
but
fine,
everything I've seen from Matt Ryan this offseason, it gives me shades of that Instagram post from 2016 in that offseason where he's just staring out of the window saying, there's 53 of us, there's 4 million of y'all. We have a really big team. Let's win some really big rings. And had we just gotten the job done in that game? That Instagram post, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. It would have gone down in Atlanta cultural folklore, not just sports, in Atlanta culture. Like that. Oh my God.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. And we'll do a brief interlude about the Super Bowl here, and we won't get into too much detail, but because
I'm sorry for mentioning it again, guys.
No, I mean it's like just... if you're not over it by now, guys, like we're never going to get totally over it, but like we should be able to talk about it and not like totally break down. But like the mythos of this team is forever changed by that event. And honestly, if they win it now, it's going to be so much like sweeter because we were there and it got taken away, and it's going to be crazy if they pull it off, which they will at some point. This team is talented enough to make serious runs for the next several years. Um, but I think going through an experience like that, it changes you fundamentally as a person, and particularly I'm talking about the players here. I mean, we're fans. Let's be real here. We weren't the people whose livelihoods were on the line for this game, and I think when something like that happens to you, you become hardened and you work. And I think honestly, this team has changed probably for the better because of that. When you get to the precipice and you don't quite make it, you can either shut down or you can get back up on the horse and try again, but with the lessons you've learned. And I think 2017, they were this close. They were this close to beating the Eagles. I think that season proved that they were intimidated by the past. They weren't going to be held back by the past anymore. In 2018, who knows what could have happened? I think that team was talented enough to compete. Injuries, the great equalizer, always. This year, I feel even better about them than last year because I think the depth. One thing I noticed from the training camp practices that I saw, the depth is better everywhere. The depth on the defensive line is better. The depth at linebacker is better. The offensive line, we have two starting guards that are fighting for one spot, and 2 first-round rookies that are. Lindstrom's locked in, but McGarry and Sombrero are going to fight it out. But they've seen all their weaknesses and they've taken steps to fix them. Basically the only thing that I think we're both mad about that they've done this offseason is Vic Beasley. But let's be honest, you can't get through the offseason without at least one questionable move. That would be really strange.
You need the quota. One is a quota.
One questionable move, and at least Beasley had shown in the past that he could be an impact pass rusher. Like, it's not like they gave $13 million to someone who had never been good before.
It's not like they took Daniel Jones with the 6th overall pick.
Yeah, it's not like Daniel Jones. I'm good we were able to get back to that. This is a team that's going to compete, and I think that if they get back to the Super Bowl, which of course we all hope they do, I think that they're not going to let it slip away from them again. Like, if they make it back again, this team is not. And it was crazy because we saw the killer instinct. We saw this team like really dominate and like take control. And then it fell apart. It did, but that doesn't take away what we saw. It doesn't take away all the good stuff of that season. Like, it doesn't erase that historic offense. It doesn't erase Matt Ryan's MVP season. It doesn't erase one of the best Super Bowl performances ever by a quarterback. It doesn't get rid of those things. As much as the national media might try to tell you that stuff doesn't matter now because they didn't win, that's a lie. That stuff matters, and it's real, and it happened. There were some mistakes made, but this team and Matt Ryan and this offense. Julio Jones said he was going to try to get 3,000 yards or whatever. I wouldn't put it past him. This man, he can do whatever he wants. But
are you? I think Dave Cho tweeted out from the Falcoholic account. Are you going to be the one to tell Julio that he can't do that?
I would never. I could never. Julio can do whatever he wants always.
But from what I've been hearing in training camp, and I think you can speak more about this. I've been hearing that the defense has gotten the better of the offense most of the time throughout this entire training camp.
Yeah, no. Well, the first day I was there was day 2, which was raining, and there were, I think, 3 or 4 interceptions in that practice. And the rain probably had something to do with that, but the defense was in position to make plays. They were jumping for tipped balls and things like that. The defense, they were competitive with the offense, and if we think the offense is as good as it should be, the fact that the defense is competitive is a very good sign. Now, we need to make sure that holds up throughout training camp because traditionally the defense is favored early on when the offense is still installing and stuff like that. But, yeah, I would agree. I would say the defense was at least as impressive as the offense, if not more so. It's going to be interesting to see what happens this season.
And this defense was top 10 in total defense. It was 9th in total defense in 2016. Or 2017, 9th in total defense in 2017. And in 2016, when Dan Quinn took over as defensive coordinator, the defense gave up 18.3 points per game in between that bye week where Dan Quinn took over play calling duties and the end of the regular season. And that's not even looking at how they pretty much shut down the Packers and pretty much shut down the Seattle Seahawks in the playoffs as well. So don't underestimate the fact that Dan Quinn is now the defensive coordinator. And I don't think we could have had possibly a single better hire than Dan
No.
Quinn as DC.
Yeah, I totally agree. It'll be interesting to see how much of a difference that actually makes. I have a feeling we could look back at that as, it's been a storyline that we've talked about, but it hasn't really been a national headline. Like, obviously, you guys are hardcore Falcons fans, so you know that Dan Quinn has taken over the defense, but the national media hasn't really picked up on that. Um, so I think that is potentially something we could look back at after the season or during the season and see like, wow, the Falcons defense is like really good. What happened? They didn't add that much talent in the draft or anything like that. And we'll be like, well, it was, Dan Quinn really taking control and that made the difference. And I think that's totally legitimate. I think we could really see that as an option. All right, I do want to talk about two more things before we get out of here, so we'll try to make it quick. The wide receiver depth, I know someone asked about Olamide Zaccheaus and how impressive he's been. Absolutely true. Zaccheaus, I would say, has been the most impressive of the undrafted guys. And I think he has a legit shot to beat out Justin Hardy for that sixth spot. I think Hardy, we've talked about it on previous shows, Hardy was allowed to walk, didn't get any significant offers. They brought him back. But to me, that means that he needs to prove that he's better than an undrafted guy, because otherwise they were content to try their luck with the undrafted guys. So that is an interesting one. Zaccheaus has also been involved in the punt return competition, kick return competition. He's bigger than I thought he was. He's not listed as being very large, but he is jacked and he looks taller than he's listed to me. So I think he has a legitimate shot to make the roster as that sixth guy. But the other wide receiver I wanted to talk about was Russell Gage, who was Matt Ryan's most targeted player in Julio Jones' absence. He was catching everything. He was running routes from the slot, from outside, everywhere. He is a player that I think has taken a very big jump from his first season. And keep in mind, he'd only play wide receiver, I think, for 1 to 2 seasons at LSU. He spent the rest of his time at corner. So he was very raw. And I think that he's their long-term wide receiver 4 at worst. I think that he has proven that he's going to be the primary depth guy and the guy that's going to rotate in when, Julio, Ridley, Sanu need to take a breather. And then, let's see. I know there's a bunch of questions. Did you have any takes on the wide receiver battle, Adnan?
It's great to see Russell Gage separating himself as that wide receiver 4. We drafted him another late round steal. We drafted him for special teams duties. He was one of the best gunners in special teams coming out of college. He had 17 special teams tackles in his career at LSU, and that's a lot. That doesn't sound like a lot, but on special teams, that is a lot of tackles. And for him to really make his mark in this league, he had to separate himself as a wide receiver. He could have been a career special teams player easily, but it's good to see that he's put in the work. And like you said, right now, like I mentioned last show, he's someone who is incredibly raw. He hasn't played wide receiver many years. I think you just said it, 2 years he's been a wide receiver. And I think we're just now seeing him develop as a wide receiver, and we'll see him continue to develop for the next few years just because of how raw he is. And he's someone who could possibly be the team's wide receiver 3 as early as next season.
Yeah. This season I think will determine whether they are content to roll with him or if they need to invest in a day 2 wide receiver to be the wide receiver 3, because I think they want the strength of that offense to be that top 3 wide receivers. So if they do move on from Sanu next year, I think that's something to keep an eye on for sure.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money to save, and they're going to be desperate. So we'll see what happens there. I would love to keep him. I would love to figure out a way to make that work, but it's probably him or Hooper, to be honest. So we'll see what happens there. I know people ask about Kaminsky, so I did want to let you guys know that John Kaminsky, say what you want about how raw he is and his level of competition, but he is a truly special athlete. And that's why I kind of, on draft day, I was like, look, he is their player. He's their type of guy. Like, he's a crazy athlete with a great work ethic that's kind of worked his way up from nothing to get to where he is. Don't be surprised if they are like, look, we're going to take him earlier than he should go. I mean, I think in our live mock draft, we took him in the 6th round, and we thought maybe that was even early, like they could get him with their 7th. But I took him in the 4th, and I think it's going to end up being worth it because his athleticism is enough that he can just produce by out playing other players. It doesn't matter how raw he is. He's a tremendous athlete and he's very strong, and he's just going to run at you and beat you with that athleticism, even as an inexperienced player. And you add technique to that, and I think that you're going to have a truly dangerous player. And I can tell you that Quinn was constantly talking up John Kaminsky early in camp about his work ethic and things like that. And he is probably going to be Jack Crawford's eventual replacement, but athletically he is special, and I would keep an eye on him for sure. Do you have any Kaminsky takes on that?
Someone who is gonna bolster the defensive line depth. I'm on record. I don't like the fact that they're converting him from defensive end
Yeah,
to defensive tackle, especially before the Alan Bailey signing.
yeah,
I'm a little less upset about it now that we have Alan Bailey, who is proficient at playing defensive end, because before the Bailey signing, it's if Vic Beasley or Tack McKinley disappoint this season, and that is very possible.
yeah,
Then you're stuck with, all right, you have Adrian Claiborne, who's a solid depth piece. I don't love him as an every down starter, and then you have nothing else.
Chris
Pretty
Odom.
much, it's barren. Oh, I'm sorry, Chris Odom. No
Yeah,
disrespect to
no
Chris
disrespect.
Odom,
AAF star Chris Odom.
but I mean, now you have Bailey, who can like, make that ease that transition a little bit. Hopefully, like I said, Vic and Tack each have double-digit sacks, but if not, then you have a fail-safe, so to speak, with that Alan Bailey signing. But John Kaminsky, he has the right attitude. I've been hearing him in these radio interviews, and he sounds like a character. He
Yeah,
sounds super entertaining, very tough. He sounds like he has the right mentality, the work ethic to get it done, and that's what you need as a day 3 selection. But the thing is, he will have uh, a lot of competition at defensive tackle, where if he wants to get on the field, he's going to have to beat out guys like Deidrin Sanat and
hmm
Davison. So we'll see how that plays out, but it's a good problem to have. You can never have too much depth.
yeah, yeah. And I don't know if he's going to ever be a full-time defensive tackle or if he's going to be more of like a Claiborne inside outside guy. I think his best value might be that kind of versatile piece as opposed to just a pure defensive tackle. But we'll see. We'll see how things go this season. One final question from Solaire of Astora, asking about how the new guards have looked, and honestly, like they both look good. I think that James Carpenter got the most reps before training camp started. Like in OTAs, he was the primary starter at left guard. And then in training camp, they started splitting it evenly. And I think by the time I had left, it seemed like Jamon Brown was getting more of the reps. It's obviously very early. But I think in the first depth chart that was released, Jamon Brown was actually listed as the starter at left guard. I can't remember exactly. But that's going to be a competition probably until the second or third preseason game. I hope they decide sooner rather than later because I want, the chemistry is important. They're going to have a lot of new pieces there. I think that it would be good to get that starting 5 as many reps together as possible. But they both looked, solid to good. I didn't really see them getting, embarrassed by anyone. I know I posted a rep of Jamon Brown locking down Claiborne. One-on-ones, it is what it is. It's not a game situation, but they look fine. I didn't notice anything. Grady Jarrett whooped them both, but he whoops everyone.
That's
So
expected.
that, that's not really news. So yeah, it's been solid. But who would you eventually like to see win that left guard spot?
I
No.
think it'll be Carpenter just because he has more experience going into it. If you would ask me my preference, I'd prefer for it to be Jamon Brown, who's younger, who's going to be on this team on a longer term, because Jamon Brown is going to be on this team no matter what next offseason because he has $8 million
Yeah.
in dead cap.
Yep.
Carpenter has around 4, which isn't ideal, but I mean, it's a case where it's not a deal breaker if you have to part ways with Carpenter, whereas Jamon Brown is going to be on this roster next season as well. So I'd rather it be Brown, but I think it'll be Carpenter because he's he's more experienced at left guard. He's come over from playing left guard, but I think he'll have a short leash
Yeah,
where if he struggles early on in the season, I don't think the coaching staff will hesitate to put in Jamon Brown because, like we've mentioned numerous times, this is a do or die year for Dan Quinn. He will put the best win now players on the field because there's no more room for, oh, let's focus on development for the future because there will be no future for Dan Quinn if this team wins 7 games again or wins
yeah.
8 games
Mhm.
or misses the playoffs, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah. The expectations are definitely very high for the season, as they should be. And like I could see like it's I'm hesitant to say like, oh, if they don't make the playoffs he's fired, because like there's a scenario where you go 10-6 and miss the playoffs. Like, I mean, that could happen. um and I don't think he's going to get fired after a 10-6 season, but outside of something like that, 9-7 might not be enough to save his job. But a lot depends. Like if they're ravaged by injuries again and they still claw their way to 9-7 and just barely miss the playoffs, this is traditionally the time that blank decides whether he's going to keep the coach or not. Like we've rarely seen a coach miss the playoffs twice and stay the coach for the Falcons, since Arthur Blank took over. So that's what got Smitty fired. He missed it in 2013, missed it in 2014. You're gone. So we will see what happens with Dan Quinn. I would be surprised if he does get fired based on what we know right now, but that could change very quickly in the season.
I would, and I'm on record as saying that I think the Falcons are going to win 12 games this season. Injury luck, injuries notwithstanding.
Yeah,
Hopefully, we
the
have some
great
luck in that
equalizer.
department.
Yeah.
But if everyone stays healthy and everything's the way it should be, I think this team wins the division and has a bye week in the playoffs. And I'm always a big time optimist, especially at this time of year. I think Dan Quinn will be here. He'll be here for the very like in the very near future, and I think he'll be here long term. But
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things where if it is 9-7 and the team isn't like ravaged by injuries, like the scenario you just painted, I don't think that he'll make it to
Yeah.
next season.
The expectations are very high. So, they were like they said the offensive line's the problem. They went out and got 2 first-rounders. They went out and signed 2 guards. We need to see. Honestly, I think if the offensive line is good, the floor for this team is like 9 wins because that offense is going to be strong enough to just carry them.
And you look at this from the perspective of Arthur Blank, he's cashing a very large check. He's spending a lot of money on this team, on these salaries, Matt Ryan's deal, these new extensions. Julio Jones is going to get his extension to the point where it is completely fair to say that Arthur Blank should expect at least at the very minimum a playoff appearance.
Yeah, and to be fair, I mean, I think we all do. We all do expect that. All right, guys, that's going to be just about it. I know Solaire's asking if there's going to be preseason game coverage, and the answer is yes, if I can find someone to do it with me. So I'm trying to do the play-by-play again, at least for the first couple games. So we'll see if we can get a color commentator in here.
I'll maybe do it with you. It just depends on my schedule on Thursday.
Okay, yeah, cool. Well, maybe Adnan will be here. If you want to do the play-by-play or the color, I don't care. I'm willing to do whatever. Yeah, we're gonna do like cover the actual game, Solaire. So like what we did last year and in years past, we'll try to do a live play-by-play coverage. Obviously, we can't show the video because we don't make the big bucks, but you can have us announce it instead of those announcers who literally have no idea who any of these players are. We'll be able to give you that clutch analysis of Olamide Zaccheaus and Marcus Green competing for that kick return battle that they could never do. So
with Kurt Benkert playing 4 quarters.
We can give you those hot takes about how Kurt Benkert could replace Matt Schaub, in 2020.
We'll talk about Kurt Benkert's Fortnite endeavors as well.
Yes, well, there's going to be plenty of airtime to fill, so definitely until the fourth quarter. Yeah, well, at least the first one we're going to do the whole thing. I know in years past we've kind of bowed out after a certain point, or it's just denigrated into talking about other things. But yeah, maybe this year with the depth they'll actually be like decent in the preseason, because that's been an issue in the past. So maybe the offensive line could be like solid enough to allow them to at least run like a couple of plays without falling apart. But
It is fun seeing the fan base panic over preseason results.
oh yeah.
Like I remember in 2016 after week 3 against the Dolphins, the everything was up in flames after week 3 of the preseason against the Dolphins.
Yeah, yeah, it's a yearly tradition. It's a yearly tradition that we must embrace. Um, yeah, so definitely tune in. I'm going to be going live. I guess either way, I'm going to be doing this on Thursday. So if I have to do it myself, that's fine. But I know Adnan has graciously offered to help if he can. But we'll do what we can. So we'll probably go live like 10 minutes before the game. So maybe like 6. I guess it's like 6:50 Eastern. Keep an eye on the Twitter, the Falcoholic Live Twitter. That'll be where you can get the updates. And yeah, we'll do it. We'll have a good time. We'll hang out. We'll be pretty casual, but I'm a try hard when it comes to play-by-play. So I'll give you all the best play-by-play analysis and all that good stuff. Yeah, but yeah. Anything else you want to touch on before we wrap up on?
I think we've covered it all.
Yep, I think we've basically gotten it. And yeah, I'm going to be posting some more videos from camp. I still have some 11 on 11 stuff that I haven't posted yet. I just have been traveling this week, so I haven't really had a chance to get to too much of that. But there's more where those videos came from. And we appreciate all you guys for tuning in. This has been the most populous show in a while, I guess. I know the off season is for like the true hardcore fans, so it's good to see some of you guys who maybe are not necessarily looking to follow in like the depths of the off season, but you're here for camp, so we appreciate you. Like I said, we will be back on Thursday for the play-by-play, and then again next week on Wednesday. We'll be going to one show a week now with training camp officially here. So before we get out of here, I want to thank my co-host for this evening, Mr. Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way on Twitter. Adnan, anything that you're working on that you'd like to plug?
Matty Ice Moments, weekly reoccurring thing until the regular season starts for all of you Matt Ryan diehard fans, of which I am a part. And I wrote this article. It went live like a week or two ago, but I'm still plugging myself, so I really recommend it. It's talking about the wide receivers, the separation that Atlanta's top 3 wide receivers create, and it has a bunch of analysis, a bunch of actual like video in it. So check that out if you have the opportunity to.
Yes, definitely check that out, guys. It's a great piece. Guys, I am Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin on Twitter. I'm going to have a piece about this crazy wide receiver competition that's going to be taking place at camp. We saw a ton of really impressive plays from the guys while I was there, so that'll be coming out this week as well. And as well, of course, check out the play-by-play on Thursday. That's going to be a lot of fun. Guarantee we're better than those crappy preseason announcers. We can say that about those games for sure. So we appreciate you guys. Like I said, follow the show. We're at Falcoholic Live on Twitter. That's where we give most of our updates. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube. I don't know what that does, but I like to see that number go up. And you also get notifications when we post stuff. So it's a win-win, really. So yeah, we appreciate all you guys for tuning in, especially during the off season. Yeah, it's just great to chat with you guys. Have a good time, and we appreciate you. So we will see you guys on Thursday. Thank you once again for tuning in. This is Kevin signing off with Adnan.
6 months of football coming up.
Yep, no more dead zone, guys. We're out of it. So until next time, guys, have a good night.